Greetings, Founding Fathers. I have been sent back from 2010 on a mission to save the United States from certain destruction. A menace has wrapped around the face of humanity, relentlessly jamming its blood funnel into the soul of our nation. We need your wisdom to defeat this menace to society before it completely conquers my generation and enslaves all future U.S. generations.
Well, to find a counter-strategy we need to recognize their battle plan. Adam says there are two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is by the sword. The other is by debt.
Yes, Founding Father, debt has been one of their weapons.
The Constitution explicitly forbids the states from issuing bills of credit, paper or fiat money, or making anything but gold and silver coin legal tender. Please tell me that the Treasury has not allowed fiat paper as legal tender.
The U.S. Treasury is still restricted by law on the amount of coinage it puts in circulation. The problem is that the real supply of money is now controlled by the central banks. The strongest banking cartel known to man has implemented a system where they can create as much money as they wish. They call themselves the Federal Reserve. They are not even a federal institution. They are a private institution owned by the largest banks. Although politicians can appoint the Fed's Board of Governors, the Fed is not accountable to the U.S. taxpayer.
Oh, heavens. Jefferson believes if the American people ever allow the banks to control issuance of their currency, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and corporations that grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children will wake up homeless on the continent their fathers occupied.
Yes, this is happening. Many Americans now find themselves in foreclosure. Unemployment is a huge problem. Some say the real number is 22 to 25%.
It was the poverty caused by the bad influence of the English bankers on the Parliament which has caused in the colonies hatred of the English and the Revolutionary War. The colonies would gladly have borne a little tax on tea and other matters. Who is in charge of your government? Who is the supreme leader?
Do you mean Federal Reserve Chairman Bernanke or his masters? It is ruled by thieves. We live in a kleptocracy. Personal wealth and political power of government officials and the ruling class has come at the expense of the wider population.
How did Bernanke come into power? Who anointed him leader of this banana republic?
In 2002, Uncle Ben referred to a statement made by Milton Friedman about using a helicopter drop of money into the economy to fight deflation. After that speech, the central banks knew they had their man.
Oh heavens! Your founding fathers not only fought for liberty and justice, they also fought for a sound economy and freedom from the tyranny of big banks. The founding fathers of this great land had no difficulty whatsoever understanding the agenda of bankers, and they frequently referred to them and their kind as, quote, friends of paper money. They hated the Bank of England, in particular, and felt that even were we successful in winning our independence from England and King George, we could never truly be a nation of freemen unless we had an honest money system.
Yes, bailing out the largest corporations is Banana Ben's main priority. He just promised to print $900 billion new dollars. He cited his mandate for full employment and insists inflation is low, but the inflation of commodities is rising parabolically. Banana Ben and his ilk deny this fact and insist that inflation is too low, so he can keep the big banks afloat. This will devastate Americans in coming months as this extraordinary inflation moves through the pipeline. Commodity and other inflation will impact Americans well before jobs and income increase. Either Uncle Ben knows something is horribly wrong in the system, or he has gambled the Fed and U.S. to salvage his life's work. The theory that the Fed didn't do enough to avert the Great Depression. Recent history is proof that the Fed's answers to our nation's economic woes is consistent. All they know how to do is create bubbles. The problem is that each bubble burst requires a bigger bubble to soften the fall. It's a vicious cycle.
$900 billion? For what?
For QE2. Zimbabwe Ben wanted to do another helicopter drop for the big banks. He wanted to steepen the curve to make them more profitable. Uncle Ben believes that if he drives up asset prices like stocks, people will feel rich and start hiring and spending money. The problem is that the vast majority of people do not own a significant amount of stocks to make a difference. This QE just raises the cost of essential goods and services. It's a silent tax on those who cannot afford it. QE1 worked miracles for the large zombie banks.
What was QE1?
Uncle Ben turned on his turbo-powered fiat printing machine. The media said that green shoots needed fertilizer. Zimbabwe Ben poured on the miracle grow. He wanted them to grow strong, grow large enough to grow over the wall of worry.
What happened after this QE1?
Flash crash, and talk of more QE. Our masters, Summers, Guy Turner, Bernanke and Congress like things just the way they are. Of course they do. They are bought and paid for. Lobbyists from the financial industry have paid hundreds of millions to Congress in the Obama administration. They have bought virtually all of the key Congress members and senators on committees overseeing finances and banking. The Congress members who receive the most money from lobbyists are the most opposed to regulation. President Obama received more donations from Goldman Sachs and the rest of the financial industry than almost anyone else. Summers and the rest of Obama's economic team have made many millions, even in the first few months of being appointed, or right beforehand, from the financial industry. There is a lone wolf though. He is at the Federal Bank of Kansas City. He is on record saying that the United States is controlled by an oligarchy. We fear for his life.
How are taxes?
The bottom 50% of all income earners pay just 3.4% of the taxes collected. Conversely, the top 20% of income earners pay a whopping 85% of the taxes collected. Politicians that promote the redistribution of wealth are very popular.
Franklin says that when the people find they can vote themselves money, that will herald the end of the republic.
Americans are now able to vote themselves money. The real unemployment rate is at depression-like 22.5. The peak unemployment rate during the Great Depression was 25. There is no doubt that we are in the midst of the Second Great Depression, but there are no breadlines and lines of unemployed winding around the corner. This is an electronic depression. 99 weeks of unemployment and food stamps are direct deposited into bank accounts so no one has to leave the comfort of their homes, the same homes that have not had mortgage payments made for the last 14 months.
What about the people? What have they done? What do they have to say? Do they protest?
Most people are content with the handouts. It's usually enough money for entertainment and processed corn products. They buy gadgets, iPhones, iPads, or even streaming videos, celebrity gossip and sitcoms, so they can escape reality. Americans on food stamps just hit a fresh all-time high. 42.4 million people rely on the government for basic sustenance.
Fall of Rome tactics, bread and circuses. Well, at least the gadget industry is robust. At least the gadget factory puts people to work.
No, the gadget factories are in China. The corporations can earn more profits with slave labor in other countries. Besides, Americans do not want to work in these gadget factories. These are places where distraught workers regularly throw themselves to their deaths. Things are getting better though. The factory masters now install nets outside the windows to prevent deaths when people jump. The United States of America is a hollowed-out shell of the great industrial machine that dominated the world. The corporate oligarchs that run this country tell us this is due to efficiency.
What about all the farmers who grow the corn? They must be prospering.
Corporations run most of the farms. Corn prices are subsidized by the government to keep prices low for food corporations. Because corn prices are artificially kept low, the small amount of private farmers do not get a good return for their crops. Cheap corn policy is similar to cheap money or zero interest rate policy. It helps the corporations earn more profits. The surplus of cheap corn finds its way into the entire food chain. Government-subsidized corn calories feed everything. The concentration camps that produce our beef and poultry can operate at low costs. Everything that is left over is processed for human consumption. They call it efficiency.
Well, at least people are not going hungry with all this cheap corn and this abundance of processed food.
Hunger is not the issue. Obesity, heart disease and diabetes are pandemic. Our health systems are overwhelmed. Cheap corn isn't so cheap when you add in the doctor bills.
What happened to the American dream that we fought so hard for?
Do you mean live beyond your means and put yourself into debt?
No, young one. I mean the pursuit of happiness.
Oh, yeah. Get a job at a too big to fail corporation, so you can lever up and make big bets.
No, absolutely not. I'm afraid Honest Abe was right. He talked about a crisis approaching that unnerved him and caused him to tremble for the safety of his country. He said that if corporations have been enthroned, an era of corruption would follow and the money power of the country would endeavor and prolong its reign by working upon the prejudices of the people until the wealth is aggregated into a few hands and the republic is destroyed.
Founding fathers, you may have won the Revolutionary War, but it has since lost one of the main things it fought for. What can we do?
Turn off the television, put down your iPads, your iPods and rebel. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God.
How do we do it?
Revolt. Abe says this country, with its institutions, belongs to the people who inhabit it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it, or their revolutionary right to dismember or overthrow it.
What is this right? What is a revolutionary right to dismember and overthrow?
Jefferson says let them take arms. What signify a few lives lost in a century or two? The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants.
What would you do?
I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death.